All right, everybody. I want to thank you guys all for joining me tonight for this very special pop-up discussion with none other than Ms Loftin of the L3 Agency. She's going to be joining me in a few minutes, but I just want to give you guys a couple house rules before we get started. First off, any questions, any comments that you have, please leave them for us. We're going to make sure that we answer all your questions tonight and read your comments and let Ms. Loftin know that you guys appreciate everything that she's doing and the information that she's going to be providing for us. Also, we're going to be talking discrimination. We're going to be talking about some controversial topics. So if you get offended or you feel like, this information may not pertain to you, I understand. And by all means, you are more than welcome to not watch the live discussion. The reason for me doing this is to shed light on topics that not only speak to me and speak to my message and what I'm doing, but also shed light into the different areas and the things that we in experiential marketing or just in event marketing in general encounter and go through. So without further ado, let me bring Ms. Loftin in.
Hello. Hi, Jay.
Hi, of the L3 Agency, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So, Ms. Loftin, go ahead and give everybody your brief introduction. Let them know who you are, how you founded the L3 Agency, and why it was so meaningful for you to do so.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, for allowing me to be a guest for this evening. I'm truly excited. I know we had schedule changes, but we are here today. And I am excited to be able to share with your community about what I believe were some of my biggest lessons through this journey. So my company is the L3 Agency. I am Larvetta Loftin. I am the founder and the chief operating officer for the agency. I started off as the L3 Eventeurs, which was a full event experiential company. We later, and so I did so many, I can't even, sometimes I'm even amazed of the work that I have been able to be on. But one of them, which is what we were talking about, was 1-800-CALL-ATT. And that was back when students had to collect. So there were no mobile phones. And so people would 1-800-CALL-ATT, that would allow them to call their loved ones. And so it was highly influential. We went to HBCU, went to the CIAA. We did a sponsorship with them. So we were on campus for a day where they had an opportunity to experience the benefits of using 1-800-CALL-ATT. Obviously, there was swag bags, and it was a team of us. We hired students on campus to participate in that. And so it was phenomenal, because one thing that I will say, when it's a brand that the students can actually use at that moment, it's highly influential on campus because they can actually go and do that. So we gave them, at the time, calling cards that they could actually use right away to call their parents. So that was a fun time. And so as a result, we pivot out of the space of experiential. Not that we didn't do it anymore, but we are now the L3 Agency, partly because a lot of our clients, which we work with a lot of corporations, they were looking for, they wanted more storytelling. They wanted more creativity. And so we like to think we're a one-stop shop that would be able to shape your story, both in the experiential standpoint, but also in the digital space. And so for us, it was a natural pivot because we were already doing it. We just weren't getting paid to do it. And so us to be able to pivot in that space was this. But here's the thing, in experiential, we also found that we were not making, our profit margins were very small. When we pivot into that space, we now were selling IP, intellectual property, which means that we had a larger profit margin. So how we present ourselves today is we are a full service marketing and communications firm who also has services in experiential. And so what happens is we're able to profit on that side so that when we are doing events, we are not able to overcharge the client, if you will, or we can get some level of a profit through it. So that's why it's been extremely beneficial for us because of that pivot. That was one that came as a result of a VC. I work with a VC who really helped to look at where we were losing money and where we were leaving money.
And what's the VC for people who don't know?
Yeah, so VC is a venture capitalist. And so that is someone who looks at your business to help you build valuation. And valuation is allowing for you to understand what's the value of the assets of your company that could potentially be sold or be acquired, which, you know, you could be sell or you can be part of an acquisition deal. And so VCs can obviously invest money into your business, you know, and let me be clear, there's a return on investment. So they will provide money, but there is a deal as a result of them investing into your company. They get a return on investment. So, you know, some deals are, you know, could be over 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, and some deals are over a year, depending on the industry. So we learned pretty quickly working with that VC that we were leaving money on the table.
So how soon after you did that first experiential marketing program with AT&T did you see that, okay, I have something here, I have something that I can leverage, we need a VC? How long? Like a year, couple months?
Oh, Jay, it was a long time. And I say a long time, it was probably about 8 years later, right? 10 years, probably 10 years later. Because when we did 1-800-CALL-ATT, that was a long time ago. But the most recent one we did, I want to say we had Verizon and we were the agency of record for Verizon. And we partnered with one of the largest experiential agencies in the country. I can't think of them at the time, but they are
Works.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Jay. Marketing Works. And so there was 2 things that we found out about Marketing Works where we found value. One was Marketing Works was not culturally sensitive. They would hire the wrong ambassadors for programming that were targeted for Black people. And when I say culturally sensitive, I'm not saying that all the people should be Black. What I am saying is that they all should be sensitive of the community that they're going in, which means that they should do their homework and they should be aware of where they are and what that particular community might be faced with, because you could be highly offended on both sides. They could be offended by the ambassador and the ambassador can be offended by the community. And so Marketing Works partnered with us. They got into a pickle, and this is where I knew that there was tremendous value in what we offer in Marketing Works. So they came to us and said, hey, can we use some of your people? Because we can't get people. And so we charged them to use the people that we had to work for them. And so we really started to be that subcontractor for these larger firms because they didn't have the pulse. They were not on the ground. They were at the high level. And so that was an opportunity. And I say an opportunity because I had staff that was on my team that were not Black. Some were Black and some were not. I work with a number of the colleges and universities in Chicago. And so one of our staffers was a white boy, love him. And he could move around, Jay, in all industries. He was very aware. He was very engaged and he was interesting because he wanted to learn from the people, but he had also some value there. And so he was so great. And so they wanted to work with him more. And so what happened was we were like, okay, if you hire our people, then you're going to have to pay us. And it was such a great thing because Our staffer was like, I only want to work for the L3 agency. I don't want to go through marketing works. So it was a very interesting thing that there were people that were loyal to us as an agency and were not interested in the general market space of the agency. So that was why we knew that we couldn't lose that market share, but we also knew that that we were leaving money on the table. So there was a 10-year span that we worked with the VC, and that VC really helped to shape our unique selling proposition for our company. And what that is what we really sell that's different from anybody else. And so we don't sell. So what we say is we don't sell people, we sell access. Mm-hmm. So we can get you wherever you want to be. So if you want to fly to Africa, we can get you there. If you want to meet someone that you've never met before, we can get you there. And so that's what we sell. But we as an agency are we are heart-centric, not people-centric, but heart-centric. And so whether we are doing an experiential campaign or we are developing an online campaign, you're always going to know that we're going to be thoughtful and that we're going to be culturally sensitive to what is happening in the world. And I think that's so when you're dealing with experiential, which I think is such a unique offering, you have to have thoughtful staffers who really are passionate about the industry. You can't just get anyone that's a cashier, right? It has to be someone that is thoughtful, that understands that the climate that we're in today, and recognize it and be patient around it is insensitive, and all of those things that are so important when we're talking and engaging in people management and people engagement. And so we had to really, shape that. And I say it takes time. I am not a fan that thinks, it happens overnight. I've been in this business. I've run my business for 20 years, but certainly have been in the business for 25 years. It takes time. And I do think that sometimes, we're looking for the microwave approach. Like, okay, put it in there, put it in for 5 minutes and just allow for it to warm and get hot. And sometimes we have to take the time. When I think about the microwave example, I think of it as in COVID, Jay, many of us were preparing food. We were creating experiences in our homes. And what we didn't realize is that, to me, and this is me, the experiential market, it pivot from a space of the heart. No longer are we doing it for the sake of the brand, right? I'm doing it for IG. It became something that says it was from the heart. Yeah. And so I do think that should have forced the big brands to really take the mirror and look at yourselves and say, how are we showing up in these spaces? And these brands are paying all this money. What is your return on investment? What is it? And so they were just getting checks, going out, and they weren't really asking questions. They weren't really becoming sensitive to what was going on. Because as you know, Jay, what happens in Atlanta is different from what happens in Chicago. So you have to be knowledgeable of that, which makes you an expert in experiential.
Yeah. And that's key. And I'm glad you hit on that. And I've been taking notes, and I got a couple questions that I want to hit on and ask and go back to. Yes. You talked about the culture of the industry. And you talked about your experience, with over 25 years in marketing and experiential. From a minority perspective, and we talked about this before we got started. What have you seen? Because there are not a lot of Black and brown experiential marketing or marketing agencies, period. Even myself, I have not worked I can count on one hand the number of experiential or event marketing agencies that have been minority-owned agencies. So being that you are one of the few,
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced breaking into this industry and being able to sustain for as long as
Yep.
you've been able to?
So the challenge of this business, it is a heavy liquid business. And when I say liquid is most of the things that we're doing is something that we can't put on receivables, right? Because you need food, right? You need certain things. You got to go get a swag bag. And so what happens is most agencies are not able to foot that bill. That's part of the problem. Okay. So they need so it's a cash flow issue. The other thing is capacity, the turnover to be able to, Jay, you got a great team, right? And then next thing you know, people stop showing up. So it's a very highly risky business. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to retain your staffing, challenge your staff. And then the other part is you haven't built a strategy to recruit. Because what happens is agencies get comfortable. And so they don't recruit anymore. They're like, okay, we got it. Instead of creating a system that allows for you to always recruit. Mm-hmm. And so that's a challenge. And so as Black firms, that requires more liquid. That means that they have to have one side of the business as operations that is executing. The other side of the business has to be recruiting. And what happens is people are on the execution side because the clients in the experts are very much, they need a lot of attention. It's a lot of hand holding.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not an industry that you can just go and just, kind of like, okay, we're done. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of hand holding. And that's part of the reason why for us, because we don't have access to capital, we don't have access to resources, this industry can be dominated by the other persuasions because they have that access. And that's difficult. And I'll tell you this. And so you got to build relationships. I had a situation where we were doing, I can't remember one of our clients, might have been a liquor client. So it was at a, very popular nightclub. So we were doing it there. And so I want to say they were not taking deposits. You had to pay the full bill. Mm-hmm. And I think the bill was like $25,000. Mm-hmm. And so, we're all just like, oh my gosh. So that the client hasn't paid you. They want to, again, for Black companies, we don't ask the questions, Jay. Mm-hmm. We don't ask, can we get half of our money up front? Because we're going to go into probably establishments that are Black owned who are going to require all full payment. And so what happened was, so I'm on the phone, my staff is working it out. They literally were like, he says he can't do it unless there's a full payment. And so I was like, we just don't have it. So this is where relationships comes in. So there was a guy. So he was doing this because he had just got burned a few months ago. Mm-hmm. So now here I come, Black firm. I can't do this for you. Mm. So the blessing was I knew one of his partners through another relationship. And he was like, no, she's good. We're going to get our money. They're waiting for the client money. You really should do that. And so we were in a pickle. We were in a jam, but it went back to relationships to be able to do it because he wanted his $25,000 and the client was not sending us money. They were not going to use their credit card. And so he was like, listen, you good. I said, listen, we'll pay you $5,000. But on top of that, Jay, what I went back to the client, and sometimes we got to go back and ask the questions with our clients. I said, because we were able to do this, and I'm not going to say I lied, but I literally was like, he's charging us because we can't pay now. He's charging us $28,000. So what I did was I took that additional money. I gave him an additional tip. I didn't give him all the $3,000, but I did give him a tip because I knew that was risky for him. Yeah. And so when Why is it? It's because we don't have that cash flow to float. That's it. And then on top of that, we may not have those relationships where someone could allow for you to do it as a receivable and pay later.
Mm-hmm. And with the current climate that we're in now in society, where all of a sudden now you have big brands saying Black Lives Matter and stepping up to the plate and say, you know, they're all for, you know, the Black and brown movement and trying to either spark, you know, Black business in different small businesses and get involved. But as an agency, you know, how do you say, you know, sometimes you don't have the money to float, or you don't have the resources to be able to go ahead and sustain that client. But how do you create that relationship with that client to, you know, for them to say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to say they don't, you know, don't, because a lot of them may feel like, you know, I'm looking at color, or I'm looking at the fact that I don't have an established relationship with you and I don't feel comfortable. So you as an agency, how are you able to break that barrier with them and, you know, explain to them, hey, aside from what your perception of Black and brown people are, we are a professional agency. We are a global agency. We run our business like this. Because oftentimes, you know, they may have been burnt by a minority, and they might feel like, you know what, that was one bad experience, and they generalize everybody the same. So how are you as an agency able to step in and create those relationships? Because there are not a lot of minority agencies, and we want more. You know, as EXPs in the field, we want to work for minority agencies, but it's tough when, you know, we may have been burnt by an agency and not been paid on time, or not paid at all, or had a bad unprofessional experience, you know, with the communication, poor communication. So from a corporate level, how do you sustain? And then even when you're working with individuals in the field, like how do you manage those two, navigate those two separate but still intertwined?
Yeah. So from a corporate standpoint, we have to get to a place to have the uncomfortable, difficult questions. And as Black people, we don't like to talk about money. And let me say this, people of color don't, because I work with other people of color and they struggle with the same thing. So I think it's a people of color struggle. And so we don't ask and we don't establish contracts. We don't establish boundaries. And so we don't allow for there to be a code of conduct within our organization. And so, and I'm going to say this, Jay, I was Verizon, you know, you work with a number of agencies with Verizon, and there was a Black company. He was a Black owner, and his business was in Tennessee, or it was a small town, maybe Birmingham. I think it was Birmingham. And he had Verizon's business, and I can't remember what side of what they did particularly, but they were in the marketing and event space. And so every Friday, they didn't receive any more calls on Friday at 1:00 because they have an agency family cookout every Friday in the summer, Jay. This is what they do. And so I was just like, so how do you tell your client, like, we can't work on Fridays? And he says, oh, I have this conversation up front. I don't have this conversation once they're in. I let them know what the culture of our business is, and either they want to hire us or they don't. But that's what I say is the difference between men and women. He was clear about it, and he was okay. So for me, I thought that I took away and said, well, I'm going to establish that with our agency. I'm going to make sure that we cut off, and we do that, and we cut off early, and we have casual Fridays and things like that. So my point in saying that is we have to have code of conduct, clear boundaries about the business at hand, and we have to make sure that we are uncomfortable asking questions. Like when we just feel like, oh, you know, I have a client right now, they didn't want to pay us up front. And I said, no, we get 50%, or some clients, we get 30%. And that's just standard. But if I was a general market agency, you would get that. So it's sometimes it's in us to start asking. I say the blessing is in the ask. And when we don't ask, we don't get blessed.
Yeah.
And so that's a very vital point in this business, is that you can demonstrate you can demonstrate that you need this money so that you can cover the cost of X and Y. Now, the second thing is, you talked about it from now we said corporate, now talking about it from a
field perspective, like hiring staff.
So one of the things that, and I will say this, if, I don't want to name any agencies, but certain agencies, they pay you more, but what? They're going to work you harder. And so one of my really good friends, she's an expert in the ambassador world. But one of the things that she kept running into was the fact that they were not sensitive to the fact that she was a woman of color. Like, they would just be like, oh, so for example, Jay, if you're working for an agency and you are doing, let's just say, a festival, and it doesn't end until 10 o'clock, no woman should be left by herself. So you should have literally a person say, well, you know what, we typically end at 10. So making sure that there's a male there, or perhaps could we hire a security person just to make sure that the ladies get to their cars, right? They haven't thought about that, because in their minds, they're thinking of you as a number, right? Not as someone that is of value. And so what we have to be able to do is, the same way they interview you, you have to interview the agency.
Yep.
And so interviewing the agency says, so give them scenarios. So what happens, and ask these questions early. Don't wait till they contracted you. What happens when, I am unable to get home because there has been a mob. Let's just say a mob. It happens in festivals. There's a mob. Can I, am I able to take Uber home? Will I be reimbursed? Ask the question up front. The second thing is food. We don't realize that people will work. And so if I'm working that shift, will you cover my food? Some might say no, some might say yes. But asking the questions at the front end, because you may not have, there's two things that happen sometimes in experiential. If you're working in Chicago, it's a taste of Chicago, right?
I've worked.
You work this, right? So if you're working your booth and you take the break, one thing you gotta be like, okay, well, now I gotta go find somewhere to eat. But when someone says, we'll cover your food, that just tells a different story about how you think that your staff should be properly fed. They should be able to be hydrated. And so if we're not interviewing them to make sure that you're not that, then that's a problem. So even with my team, I always, to this day, they have to take a lunch. I don't play, because you're no good to me if you haven't been properly fed and you haven't had water. So to me, it's just unethical. And what happens is, where I think staffers, ambassadors, and key experts mess up is they don't have that conversation at the front end. They don't ask them, is there a stipend for cases like, I have to take Uber home, cases where I didn't get a chance to have dinner. Can I pick up dinner on my way home? Because in this new COVID, you may not have, you may not feel comfortable eating. So, okay, so can I pick up something and go home? Is that something you're going to offer from a safety? The second thing is, if I'm if I feel like I'm getting sick, can I be notified to tell somebody I'm not feeling well? Like, we have to ask these questions up front.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate with you, because A lot of EXPs in the field take that and run with it and have a entitlement mentality. So how do you, as an agency, differentiate from the people who are genuinely there to do their jobs, to represent themselves, represent you as an agency with professionalism, to engage with consumers and do everything that they have been contracted to do, from the ones that show up late, unprofessional, always you spend half of the time on their cell phone, you got to micromanage the whole time. And I've had to do this, and I'm not a person that likes to micromanage people. I'll send you home.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate from, the EXP who loves what they do, who come there, who do quality work, who's extremely professional, from the one who's entitled and takes advantage of those?
So I will say this. So even in my business today, I don't care about you being there 10 hours. I care about performance. Mm-hmm. So I look at performance. I don't care about what did you perform. And so the way to weed that out is you have to set KPIs, right? And those KPIs might be every 2 hours, you need to have done this and you need to submit it.
Yeah.
You can always challenge with, or you just won't get paid.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is, for me as an agency, I have to be ready to fire fast. Mm-hmm. So so with that, Jay, but that means that I'm always recruiting. Yeah. I'm never stopped recruiting. We've been on, we're interviewing all the time, because I don't know when this isn't going to work and someone says, hey, I don't want to get up and work no more. Okay, cool. I got somebody in place for you. Mm-hmm. So you got to get to a place. There's two things. One is you've got to get to a place, when you say devil's advocate, that I'm serious about what I do and I value time. Yeah. So we have a clock in service. You have to clock in. Like, it's going to tell me what time you really were there. Where are you at that? And now with technology, we can do that. So the people that don't pull their weight, they will be exposed. Mm-hmm. And I will get rid of them. That's what I would do. Just get rid of them, because there's no, if Jay, and I believe in also full disclosure. Yeah. So if you're on a text and it's 4 ambassadors and you say, everybody, you draw, get this. Oh, yep. So what, one of the things we did, we took pictures. So it's like, I'm here. And so what I realized is that ambassadors who are entitled, they don't want to be embarrassed. Mm-hmm. So when the people that are doing it, I was like, wow, that's interesting, because everybody else did it. So why? So it sounds like this doesn't work out for you. So they're embarrassed by their peers, not by me. They don't care about me, but they're embarrassed by their peers. So I have found that you just have to be at a place where you hire quickly. I mean, you hire slow and fire fast.
Yes. My husband down there like, woo, preach, sister.
You have to. The thing is, as you build your business, you need to be able to build a code of conduct, conduct that is like your pledge of allegiance. I pledge to blank. I pledge to blank, and have them sign off on that. When they don't pledge to that, Jay, get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you signed off on, you would always pledge, and you would represent yourself by being punctual. You would represent yourself by submitting your numbers within the time frame. I will commit myself to make sure that I present myself. I'm well groomed. And my hair is combed. Those are things. So when that happens, when you let them go, Jay, you just pull up your conduct contract and you say, you did not fulfill conduct number 5 and 6, and that's what we hired you for.
Mm-hmm. So what do you say to the minority EXPs who feel like, well, they didn't hire me because I'm Black, or they're discriminating against me because of my hair, or because of my appearance?
So I've experienced that, and I know what that feels like.
Yes.
And
one more, how do you deal with clients who have a specific look and tell you only to hire this way, when as an agency owner, that a minority or a person of color would be better for the position, but they are telling you to do one thing. How do you as a client, service that liaison while making sure everybody's happy?
So I'm going to go back to challenging the client. So at the front end of the client, I mean, let's just be real. If they do that, that is illegal, right? It's illegal. So when it's a situation where you are asking me to do something that is illegal, we have to learn how to put the brakes on it and say, no, I will not conform.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
And I don't think we do it because we're so excited about contracts. And we have to be okay with that. What we see right now in the culture is that this power and greed is being exposed. Nobody's exempt, whether you're Black or whatever, it's what no one's exempt. Yeah. So what I will say, Jay, is there's two things that I believe. You must have you must always have a mentor in your business that can speak sometimes on your behalf without you. Because it helps to have the dialogue without the emotion. Yeah. So, perhaps you can talk to my counsel. Sometimes you just got to step back. You got to ask yourself, how can I get me an attorney that I'm friends with, right? And you can say, perhaps I think you should talk to my counsel. And let me tell you something. When you say those words, the whole conversation shifts. So we don't use our power the way that we should. Yeah. We shrink ourselves to fit in.
Yes.
And so that's where we have to stop and say, no, when I am uncomfortable or I feel like this is unethical, then I have to say to myself, who can I call to be able to help me in that regard? Someone who has experience or knowledge around that. And let me say this, if you are, or you feel, and a lot of people don't do this, but if you feel that you are that there was some discrimination, you can always call the Attorney General in your city. People don't realize that works. Attorney General speaks for you. So if you believe that a company discriminated you, Attorney General will work on your behalf. But here's the thing, Jay, the people that feel like that have to be very specific. And that's something that people have to be. So at 2:04, Miss such and such said this. So those are people to me that you don't want in a courtroom, because if they can document, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't throw it out if you can't document. So even in our firm, my team, they can't stand it. We write notes for everything. Write notes. Because if something was to happen, if you were put in a situation where perhaps a client may have called you at, let's just say, after hours, and you didn't write notes about it, who do you think is in trouble?
Your word against theirs.
And that's what we don't do. So what even when I tell my staffers of women, never travel with the client by yourself. Never. Never. Always have someone for accountability purposes, or we can call them witnesses, right? That can vouch and say, nope, that's not what happened. And I remember, because I partner with a lot of agencies, and I was in a situation, where I was compromised with the client. It was a bully situation. And I was so uncomfortable. I shared with my client at the time, and I documented everything. So he no longer bullied me because he saw that she had a detail. I didn't wait till next week. I got on that plane. I wrote this report. I submitted it to the client. and they were like, we've got word of blank. And they were like, you know what? It's okay. You don't need to travel with that particular client anymore. But we can't rush and paint discrimination if we're not really able to document. And, we got phones. I mean, when I was coming up, I still believe in journal and having a journal, but you can screenshot now, you can record it, like you can do so much. So to me, when people do that, but here's what we don't do, Jay, we don't give the full context.
Yes, we tell one side of the story.
So if I was to say, hypothetically, you just come onto this interview and I said, girl, you don't know what you're talking about. Somebody could take that and was like, she said, girl, she was given an example of blah, 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 blah. And so people will take that, which is why communication is so important, but we don't know how to do that. And I think that that's what I see for us as we move, is that we're in the age, the catalyst right now and the cash and currency is in the data.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you have the ability to hold your data as ransom.
Yeah.
And people don't use that to their advantage.
Yeah.
And so instead, I'm going to post, I'm at the IG. You might want to hold that data because that data you might need to use it later. So we don't think, I say, coming up, it was think before you speak, but I always say think before you post.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just don't know when you might have to utilize that post at a later date, and someone could misconstrue what you would have been doing. Because if you're posting while you're working, right? Mm-hmm. And then you throw the discrimination, they can throw, well, you shouldn't have been posting. Mm-hmm. So you got to be clear about that and ensure that you're not also a breach in contract of what they're asking of you.
And read your contracts too.
And read your contracts thoroughly.
Yes.
Thoroughly. And making sure you have insurance. People don't understand the importance of having liability insurance and ensuring that you have that, because when you have that insurance, they're going to give you an attorney, right? You ain't got to worry about that. So just making sure that you have those things to protect you in a space of experiential. You are the assets. Mm-hmm. So you have to find a way to protect you. Yeah. You can't they're not going to protect you. You have to protect you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, because that was a mouthful, but it was very insightful and something that individuals in the industry as well as agencies needed to hear. You touched on something with regards to data, with regards to protecting your information. And I just want you to speak from an agency standpoint. When you are looking to execute programs, and we talked a little bit, you are an HBCU grad. So why do you think, or what do you think experiential marketing agencies or clients, brands are missing out by not executing events at more diverse venues, more diverse locations, more diverse colleges? Because I think there's a strong disconnect there. And, I've executed events, where I've said, hey, why didn't they go to this part of town? Why didn't they go to this venue? This would have been great. Black people spend money just like other races, and the dollar is important too. So why are they not allocating money, experiential marketing, towards this demographic or that market? Why do you think that?
So here's the number one thing that I say within my agency. We don't research enough.
Yeah.
So what happens is we assume that this particular organization, agency, knows it all. And so I have had to sit at the table, Jay, and say, that's not true.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how I do it. I do it in a way that says research has shown, studies have been proven. And so it's not coming from me, it's coming from the research and the data. Yeah. And so when I pull the numbers, it's like, oh, we had no idea that we could, that the HBCU community with this highly influential. So they are clueless. Yeah. And so they're so clueless that I remember working for a big brand that was surprised that I went to a HBCU. I didn't blast it, but they were like, oh, and I know what she was really saying was that you're so knowledgeable and you went to an HBCU. I know that's where she was going. Yeah. And I said, interesting. I said, are you familiar with Martin Luther King? And she was like, yeah. I said, he went to an HBCU. Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. So sometimes it is our response, and I know it's frustrating because we have these conversations within my team. It is our responsibility to educate the uneducated. It is. And that has nothing to do with color. That has nothing to do with lack of education. When we have education and knowledge is power, right? The people perish for lack of knowledge. Yes. And so when we stop getting knowledge, to me, I believe we stop living. Yeah. Okay. Because in order to live, you got to constantly keep up. So I have had to present to our clients all the time. And the number one thing that I don't think, and I'm being honest, Jay, I don't think that younger professionals understand the power of research. Yeah. They are just like, it should be like this. Well, you got to paint the picture. You have to give them the full story. And so I struggle with that because it's just like, we should be doing that. But why should we? Like, let's discover the why and why should we do this? And so when you find out that, when you really study and say, hey, this is worth us exploring, you can. So one of our clients we did something called with Be the Match, right? And so they were they really wanted to target HBCUs. So they were going to white colleges, but they were getting better participation in HBCUs. However, they were also discovering that HBCUs did not believe in Be the Match. They believed that they were going to steal their organs, right? Mm-hmm. So when they came to me, I said to them, listen, do you know the history behind our culture with our organs come up missing? Yes. They had no idea. Mm-hmm. So I said, so these are the students, their parents have trained them and told them about that. So there is why there is some level of trepidation for them. And so they have some apathy on why they should do this. Yeah. So you, brand, have to come out and share that you are sensitive. I'm gonna go back to that history and that you are. So their angle was they've got two black kids that can't get donors to live because there's not black. So tell that story, right? But you got to go back to the history. You can't come in with that. You got to be able to showcase. Let me break down. So what they didn't understand was what we had to tell them was that couldn't you have a pizza party in a dorm and have dialogue on what they thought based on who you guys are, and really just kind of whiteboard it a little bit and really have these rich conversations that get people to be educated on the brand, why it was started, why you're doing what you're doing, why you're targeting Black campuses, because their thinking is you're trying to steal our organs. Mm-hmm. And so so I say this, I am put in those situations. And so what I say is that, Jay, responsibility as experts in the space of experiential, you got to be the advocate. Mm-hmm. And so as the advocate is, you've got to advocate for the audience you're targeting, and then you have to advocate for the client. So you have to be able to shape that so that they understand that. So while I was talking to the client, I was like, listen, guys, you got to be sensitive, So then we came in when we were on a student campus. Let me help you understand, which means that you needed an agency of color to help you tell the story, because if you didn't, guess what happens? That would be
they be lost.
Practice, yeah. Right? So you have to be able to do that. And so that's where we have to uncover the truth about history and not tiptoe around it, really have that conversation. And that's where sometimes we flee. We flee.
Yeah, you're right. And I was actually, me and my husband were brand ambassadors for Be the Match. And I did it.
Yes.
I was a donor. I actually was chosen for a child.
Wow.
I'll share my story. I'll send you the link. And I went to Georgetown, and I was a match for a kid, and I did the surgery. I did the bone marrow surgery.
Oh, nice. That's see, Jay, but you see how you're caught to the story of how you're saving someone versus you're just getting signups. Really tell the story. And they couldn't get it. Once they got it, we were on task, but they couldn't get it. They could not understand, well, how do we touch the HBCU? So when we came in, we helped them, identify people, but we had to have these rich conversations, and we utilized the sororities and fraternities to really bring light to the benefit of Be the Match. But they didn't know that there was this, and we call those, right? If you did a SWOT analysis, those are threats, and they did not go through and really understand what their threats were. They didn't get that. And that's where, to me, we have to be advocates inside and advocates outside.
Do you think, since this whole movement has occurred, that they're going to be more advantageous and more open to not seeing these demographics or these venues or these HBCUs as threats? Do you think?
I do. I think you're going to see a shift. But here's what I say. Change won't happen until advocates who look like us ring the alarm.
Yes.
We cannot. And I say that because if I am an agency who believes that you need to do better, guess what? I hire from the community. I'm intentional with hiring from the community. I can't expect them to do something that I'm not willing to do. And when you hire from the community, you don't always get the skills that you want. You don't. You have to train it. So we have to also, on that side, be a little uncomfortable. But I always say doing good is good, period. No matter what, it's just good. So we have to make sure that we're doing good on our end to challenge them to do better.
Yeah, I agree. So how have you been pivoting? I've been watching some of your videos you've been putting out on your page, Crisis and Currency, to name one. How have you been able to shift? Because there are no consumer events, or they're just starting to pop back up now.
Yeah.
How has your agency been able to use this time as an opportunity to pivot and to, change direction or further expand on what services you offer?
So here's how we have pivot. We pivot, and I say this now, is one is we are hiring Black women, people of color, and we're not going to apologize for that. So that's a pivot. We're clear that we're an agency that employs Black women, Black solopreneurs, to be able to expand our workforce. So that's first. We were doing it before, but we're really intentional with that. The other thing we pivot is one around how to help these brands have these very, I call them unhealthy and difficult conversations in the workplace. However, because what we know to be true is that staff are ambassadors for your business. And so that's important that happens. And we haven't been doing that. So we really are trying to help companies to be able to have these employee affinity groups, because a lot of them have affinity groups that you can begin to build on and be advocates inside. So for example, use an affinity group. If you're having an African-American group, challenge your companies to hire minority firms. Challenge them to say, why don't we have that minority janitorial company? Why don't we have this? And so challenge it. So we have been pivoting to challenge companies, we've been asking the questions like, hey, how much money do you spend in minorities? How much money do you spend in these industries? So we do ask that question. The other thing that we pivot is around social impact. That kind of happened a couple of years ago, but we really are helping brands to make an impact, utilizing social media to do that. Many of them have a charity component, but they haven't been able to blend their story of their charity into making an impact to create loyalty with their customers and their consumers. So we really have been doing a lot of social impact. The other thing that we have pivoted into is research. We've been doing a lot of research for them. And so that's an intellectual part. We're not able to be like, hey, we've got some research, we can share that with you, they'll pay. The other thing that we're also selling out is technology. We are innovative. We're not afraid of technology. We're not afraid of introducing communities into technology. That would be great for us to create an experience. So we have a client right now that we're trying to get them to adopt into, having video streams that makes sense, but creating an experience with music, with swag bags, and be able to do that. So we are an agency that is going to be innovative in how to utilize technology to be able to further engage with communities, if that's what we're going after. So that has been something that I enjoy. I love technology and how technology can really bring together communities in such a beautiful way. People don't understand, like Pinterest. I love Pinterest. We worked with Verizon years ago, and Pinterest, you can create a digital board. Mm-hmm. And so how can you help communities sit down and write their vision? And Pinterest allows for you to do that. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're able to do that we haven't been able to do. So we really have been pivoted around that.
Mm-hmm. And talk a little bit about stand up and level up, this opportunity that you.
So yes, I got about 6%. I'm just hoping that the computer, I didn't think to get my charger, but stand up. Stand out and level up is our campaign back, our give back to the community. We recognize that there were so many businesses that are impacted by COVID, that are impacted by racial injustice and are not getting their funds. And so what I also see, because of research, Black companies don't have online presence. And so they're losing out on an opportunity for people to engage, whether that's, creating fan engagement or to get new customers. And so we are gifting 3 local Black businesses a landing page to help them. So all they need essentially is just the domain. And so we will build out their landing page so that when they come to their site, they can at least see who they are and know what they sell. And so we wanted to do that so that we can help with the digital divide. We know that there's a huge wealth gap, and part of the wealth gap comes from the digital footprint of our businesses. And so we wanted to do that. So on our website, it is for people for Chicago. And that was personally because we're out of Chicago. We wanted to make sure that we're able to support where we're headquartered out of and from a capacity. So we wanted to do 3 businesses. We have no real besides, you just have to have a domain name. You just have to have a domain name. And here's the other part that you got to have, Jay. You got to be willing to communicate with us within 48 hours. We were clear about that, because if we're going to do this work and we can't get to you and you're not available, then this is probably not something that you're going to take time and invest in. So that was also important. So we're really excited about this. The deadline is next Friday. We're excited, and they'll get to showcase their landing. Hopefully, this will just be the start of them investing in making sure they're leveling up their business.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So any Chicago-based EXPs or anybody that has a business, correct, in the Chicago area,
yes,
you're more than welcome. I'm going to put the information in the comments area for you to apply for that opportunity. I got one more question, but I want you to grab your chart.
Okay, I'm going to go grab it.
Okay. So if you guys have been enjoying this conversation thus far, definitely drop your comments. Let me know your thoughts, because Ms. Loftin has shared some incredible insights, some incredible knowledge and information that I think is going to be pertinent, not only now in the present state of the experiential or event industry, but just moving forward with regards to diversity, with regards to establishing yourself as a minority business owner within the event marketing industry. And she also touched on her challenges and some of the things that she has had to overcome as a minority experiential marketing and agency owner. So her dynamic is essential to the growth of the experiential marketing industry, and her being able to talk about that and talk from a strength of someone who's been in the field to now owning an agency and being able to shift and retain clients and maintain relationships is key. So I'm going to bring her back in really quick, and we are going to hop into this last question.
Yes.
So my last question for you before you go: what advice do you have for Black and brown people, or just people in color and people of color in general, in the experiential marketing industry who are looking to advance and start their own agency like you've been able to do? What would you tell them in hindsight, looking back?
So I'm going to always say this because this is just who I am, and I've been this. Always stay a student in the business. Never, you can be an expert in what you do, but you need to stay a student, which means that you're coachable, you're mentorable, and that you can course correct. And so that's so important in this business. I mean, that's across all industries, but I just believe that as a Black professional in this business, I just think that staying there. The second thing, and I recently did an interview and I say research. Be able to research. Never research a couple of different. One is research the brand that you're working for. Really make sure that it's a good fit for who you are as a personal brand. Because sometimes we get with these brands based on money, but it doesn't align to who we are personally. And so I say do research. And the reason why I say that is because in the stock market, we don't, you look at, when you go into the stock market, you do your research, you see if it's good or bad, and you make a decision to purchase the stock. Same situation. It's like, before you decide this is a good fit for you, research, is that stock good? What does the stock market say about it? Are they winning? Are they not? Are they suffering? Most big brands have annual reports, and I challenge you that when you're in this business, check out their annual reports. Look at where they're spending their money. Are they spending money on things that really are no value? So making sure that you're able to do that. The other thing is, don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up. Sometimes we just allow ourselves to continue and don't speak up, but don't allow ourselves to speak up. And then I'll say, finally, don't be afraid to decline. Don't be afraid to decline.
So go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Because declining gives you stock in who you are. And we haven't figured out so that when someone says, and I know we say no, but I mean, decline is a way that, so just like the phone, right? You either answer it or you decline it, right? That doesn't mean, reason why I say I'm careful with no, because decline says I can call you later.
Yeah.
Right? When you're ready to be able to value who I am. So don't be afraid to decline. So no means not yet, but being able, if you're in this business, be okay with what you sell, what you offer. And if someone shows up that's not aligned to where you are, you okay with declining, because it doesn't mean that you won't align to where, they won't align to where you are in business. And so they will call you. Hey, we noticed that you're working on this. So now we've got more work in this area. So we can do this. So just thinking that and making sure that people really value that. And these are lessons that I had to learn. So I still had to get to a place where we can just say, you know what, unfortunately, this doesn't work for us right now. So we have to decline on this opportunity. But decline to me says that doesn't mean another opportunity can't come back.
So what do you say to the person that has started an agency and they've put the RFPs out? They've been reaching out to companies, reaching out to brands, have gotten, the door shut in their face numerous times, have been told no, and they're discouraged. And they're like, it's maybe me having an agency is just not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. How have you been able to stay steadfast and motivated through all of the no's?
So I think that's such a great question, Jay, for a number of reasons. So the truth of the matter is I built my company as a sub. I worked with big firms who brought me on because they wanted a person of color and they paid me a boatload of money. You can ask yourself, do you want the acknowledgement or do you want the check? And that's where you have to make that decision. So for me, I didn't have to. I knew that I didn't. So what that means is that when you are a sub, you cannot promote that brand. That you can promote the agency you work for, but you cannot promote that brand. And so sometimes when people work with me, they don't want to work because you cannot say that you had Verizon as a client, but you can say that you had the L3 agency as a client. And so making the decision that there's a lot of money that is being made. And I talked about this in my last episode of Crisis Currency Roundtable. And Dr. Fred said there's a lot of people that make a lot of money that you don't even know them. They don't have a personal brand. So if you're the person that wants to be the brand and you want people to know you, then that's going to be challenging because you got to keep up with that. So ask yourself two things. How can you align yourself to be a subcontractor for a larger firm that might need more capacity building, and you could be the extension for them that they just, really need right now. So they might get the contract with, a Southwest Airlines, but they, unfortunately, your agency was not able to get it because they don't believe that you have the capacity to handle, but you could come in and be a sub. The thing that I want to talk to people about minority certifications. The way to sell your agency is sell yourself to the top. So when you go and do an RFP, typically there's a meeting, there's an informational meeting. Find out who's going to be in that meeting. Get a list because they do make that public. The top agencies, and you say, if we don't get it, or, can we partner? Can we help you serve in a role that perhaps, and let me say this, I have done this and it works. Okay. Now I'm not at the forefront. I'm okay, but I'm getting my check every month. So it works for me. And let me say this, most times when you are a sub, I take good care of my subs. The agency takes, because you are the asset. So we are going to treat you probably much better
than the actual
winner. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I really stress for those that are discouraged is how can you partner, collaborate, and serve as a sub in cases where they need additional support and workforce to be able to do that. And you'd be surprised when that happens, how many were like, you know what, we've been trying to get somebody, oh my gosh, this would be great. We'll pay you this, you get this, and it's an easy fix. So, but you've got to make a decision. And for me, I made a decision that I didn't care about social. While I have a very vibrant, influential personal brand, but that wasn't based on the brands I had, was based on the value and the influence that I had. And so that's how I was able, and the relationships that I have and the outcomes. So when they were like, oh, Larvetta's doing it, oh, we good. And so it was just like, oh, okay. But I didn't even promote it. I didn't say anything. I didn't share about it. And I used to be a person that didn't want to brag, because I have worked for so many luminaries across the country, because before social, we couldn't share. We couldn't share who we work for. We couldn't share that. So, this idea of social is the new thing, right? To be able to brag. But I used to have a problem, and I tell people, social is a great, always be social, but you don't always have to sell on social.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whew. Thank you so much for your time tonight. It was great, and it was extremely informative for me, and it was awesome to hear it from another Black woman, to tell her story, to tell how you've been able to successfully build an agency and maintain an agency and hire minorities. It means so much to me, because it gives me hope that there are agencies out there.
They are.
Truly understand what it's like to be a minority in this industry, and value the importance of giving minorities a chance when agencies don't.
Yes. And I will give, because I know I was in that seat. I experienced it. So, I'm unapologetic with my white colleagues. I am. When they see how beautiful we are and how we can create Black girl magic with the work we do, I think it's incredibly, I think we're incredibly gifted, but more importantly, it really just helps us to know that we can work together, that we can create magic. And it helps them understand that magic does exist with Black girls. Magic does exist. Mm-hmm. It's not just a hashtag, right? It's not just a hashtag. It really does exist.
Yes, we have a lot of magic, a lot. Experiential, where do you see it post-pandemic?
So I do see that it's going to be, and I'll be honest with you, I said this about 5 years ago, maybe about 4 years ago. I think that what you're going to see is micro communities. So the same way, so it's not large scale events. It's going to be very small, intimate, impactful, quality engagement. Really quality leads will come out that way. I think you're going to see that blow up very exponentially. So it's going to be, how can you get 9 of your girlfriends together in a backyard and showcase how they can 2-strand twist their hair? I think that that's what we're going to see. And we're going to see that exponentially through various platforms. I also think that how we're also going to see influencers go away a bit. And so what we're going to see, though, is micro influencers really make that impact. And I think that's where experiential experts will be able to play a tremendous role, because what they'll be able to do is create that experience that will create an imminent experience that they would watch. Because there's no way you can really have, right, an incredible experience when there's 1 million people.
Yeah.
But what you can do, though, Jay, is that you can have 10 people have 1 million views. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what's going to look different. I do think that the other part of it is that we'll be able to decide now what we really want. So, for example, while I like, my artist, I'm not going to listen to the other 3. I'm just going to tune into the one I want. So now we'll get to do that. So how cool is it for you to create an experience where you could be listening to your favorite, as a show, but a brand says 10 people from social who were talking on social will have an experience to talk to their favorite artist, this way. Mm-hmm. I do see that we're going to see that. And we're going to see it in a way that's going to really, it's that, I know it's about that picture and this, but I think it's more about this FaceTime opportunity. And so I think that up close and personal is about to be the hottest thing in the experiential space.
I agree. I think it's going digital too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, but what I will say is that I do think that the communities will look different. So the way that we will still go to music shows, but I think you're going to see more smaller venues really pop up more. Mm-hmm. We're going to see that.
Mm-hmm. So outside of running a successful agency, what are your hobbies? What do you do to?
I love that you asked that, Jay, because I love that people don't understand that while I run this business, I love the outdoors. So I am an adventurer and love to be adventurous. So one of the things that I do love is I do love DIY projects. So I've been working in COVID on a photo wall in my house. It's in my living room area. So it's a combination of quotes and it's pictures of people that I've met along my career. So I've been working on that. So I do like DIY projects. I do like cooking new recipes. So I do enjoy that. I don't want to cook every day, but I do like cooking new recipes. So I've been grilling. So I do enjoy just being outside. I do love working out. So I am a 4-day girl. When COVID happened, I was struggling just because I got tired of working from home, working out from home, eating from home. So when it started to warm up, I work out outside because I just want to get from out of the space to be able to. So I love working out. I also am most people, some friends know this. I like taking pictures, but I like to have them printed. So while I think taking pictures are online, but I like to print them and put them in photo albums and do all that. So that is something that I enjoy doing. And so and I am an avid reader. So during COVID, I bought a number of books by Black authors, and I can read 3 books at a time.
Yes, I'm reading too. I'm catching up.
So it's a lot of fun to just read. And I do, Jay. I love me a glass of wine, and I love me a cocktail or two. So let me make sure that I enjoy that too. And making sure that it's so funny because I've just been experimenting with, just because we're stuck. Like, what else we're gonna do? So I was like making my own drinks and figuring. I was like, oh, let me try this. So I started doing that, which is because I'm such a wine drinker. But I started looking at all this stuff that people buy me. I was like, oh, let me try this. So that's also some things that I've been able to do during COVID, and I enjoy. I love to entertain at home, so I'm big on entertaining at home.
Yes, y'all have Mariano's. That's one of my favorite stores.
Yes,
in Chicago, and Battered and Berries, my favorite black.
So they're opening up another location, Jay.
Yeah,
they're opening up another. I can't remember where it's gonna be, but they are opening up another location. So you have to check out the new location. But they were doing a pop-up during COVID at the ice cream shop, this Black-owned ice cream shop. So they were selling out of there, which was really cool. So they collaborated with an ice cream shop, and they were able to sell their meals out of there, which I thought was such a novel idea too. It was really cool to do that.
That's awesome. Hopefully I'll be there by the end of next year to check it out.
Yes, please do. Come to Chicago. I know when you look at the news, it don't look like,
No, I'm always there. I love Chicago.
Okay.
Places, so
I'm
good. But how can an agency, how can a client get in contact with you if they want to hire you for, events or just hear more about your services?
Yes. So going to our website, which is the L3agency.com, you actually could go to our capabilities tab, submit your information, and we'll send you capabilities, and then we contact you. We actually have that as well. We have our office numbers on there, which is a real number that you actually called on it, right, Jay? It was a real number. Our office number that will come to me, and I'm in extension 103. And so that's one way. Certainly, by emailing me is another way. But if you go specifically, it's like my email address is also there. But on the website, you email to that to that email address, and we will contact you specifically for whatever you're looking for. We were really, when we were building out the site, which we're actually going through a migration right now, we were really trying to get influencers to submit information so that we can have it. But we found that wasn't really successful. So, but clients can get to us that way. by going to our website. We are on all platforms. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, and we are on Facebook. So you can certainly reach out to us, to those at the L3 Agency. We're on all channels at the L3 Agency. So, and we respond pretty quickly within a day. If it's after hours, we don't respond. We've set boundaries in place so that we can ensure that, our team is being properly nurtured and getting the proper rest that they need to make sure that they can be great every day.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Loftin, for taking the time to speak to me tonight, and for sharing your insight and your knowledge, and for being transparent. I appreciate it, and I cannot say thank you enough.
And I want to say to you, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for what you do, because what happens is that we are not able to acknowledge people like you who are making a difference, who are the next generation, who will sit at the same seat and be able to bring others alongside of them. So I support you any way that I can. I'm just happy to be here and be of service, because I am such a service person that I think that that's so important, that we constantly continue to serve one another any way that we can. So thank you for allowing me to be part of your community.
Thank you so much. And with that, EXP's family and friends, we are going to end tonight. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy your week. And make sure you guys be safe and practice social distancing and wear your mask.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.